In this video, we will learn about the various aspects of a project. Primarily, we need to understand that anything that we want to analyze, if we try to analyze it from various angles, then it is likely that we will come up with a good, wholesome analysis. Here we are trying to do the same, and we are trying to analyze a project from various aspects of it. And there are about 5 to 6 aspects that we will study here. So for this wholesome analysis from all possible angles, we should consider most of the aspects of it, and then we can say that most of the dimensions have been addressed, and not much of it is left unaddressed. So the first one is the technical or engineering aspect. We should consider the technical side of the project, the engineering side of the project, that what are the various production possibilities, constraints and technical relations in the proposed project. For example, we can consider the scale of production, that how much of the output we should produce given the inputs and other constraints. This is one thing that we need to consider in this aspect. We should also consider that what should be the size of the plant. Should we have a large plant or a small plant? How many inputs are used in a certain plant? So such questions, they should also be considered and answered before we complete the decision of the project. The layout of site and building, this is another thing that is related to the engineering or technical side of the project. This is definitely the engineer's task or the technical side of the project. How should be the building, and where should we plot it, where should we construct the whole structure. Then choice of technique is something that is related to economics as well, that should we use more labor in the production process or more of the capital. In our economic terms, it is K over L, that is capital to labor ratio. And what we are trying to answer is if we are going for more of labor as compared to capital or vice versa. So this is another important question that we need to ask ourselves in the technical aspect. Marketing, for example, marketing can be done online or offline in manual mode. So that's another question that we need to ask, the technical side of the marketing. And then the storage facilities, what sort of storage facilities should we use? Should we use warehouse or any other similar storage facility? This is another technical aspect of the project. And then there are work schedules. Another thing to be considered in the work process is the work schedule. And for that, what we do is what work needs to be done and which resources are to be used and what are the time frames in this process, so that it should reflect that all of the works associated with delivering the project are done on time. So we are trying to organize all the activities and the resources in such a way where we are taking into account the timeline of the project, and we want to make sure that the activities are performed at their specific time. It's just an example of that where the project schedule of the first year is plotted. You can see we have divided it into 12 months because it's a 1 year. So on monthly basis the activities are being scheduled here. There are broader objectives, outcome 1, outcome 2 and outcome 3. In order to achieve these broader outcomes or objectives, there are a few activities that we need to undertake, and you can see that there are 3 activities in this case, 6 in this case and 4 in this case, which are highlighted with these bluish color, whereas this gray color is basically talking about the first outcome and the second outcome and the third outcome. So in this way we have a set of outcomes and then activities, these things are nicely divided so that we could monitor each and everything in various points in time, that what is going on, and technically speaking, are the things being done the way they should be done. So this work schedule is a very helpful thing to deliver the project on time and avoid any unnecessary delay, and making sure that the resources and the human resources, both of them, they are suitably working and employed at the right place. This is the first year schedule, and definitely it can be extended to any number of years. Yes, we can extend it to equal to the number of years for which the project is lasting. For example, it can be 5 years or 10 years, depending upon the situation. Now, institutional, organizational, and managerial aspect. This aspect basically, or this cluster of aspects, deals with three major categories. First is the institutional, because every society has its own socio-cultural patterns, and if they get affected, it means that our project should be analyzed from this aspect, and we should make sure that nothing socially unacceptable is being done, and people are able to accept what is happening as a result of the project. And it's basically a slow process, and ample time should be permitted, because society doesn't change overnight. It takes time. Whenever some intervention has taken place, or a project is there that is trying to do something, bring some social change or affect the society in one way or the other. So it's a slow process. It takes time because there are many people involved with different opinions. For example, amidst COVID-19, rural people might face difficulty in adopting social distancing. You know that people in rural areas, they are less careful about their health, in a way that they have their own faith, and they don't bother much when it comes to health. Perhaps they have better health, better nutrition, and a better lifestyle, opposite to the sedentary lifestyle that is followed in the cities. So on the whole, they are less cautious, and if they are asked to follow the social distancing during the COVID-19, they will not be very much welcoming this or adopting it easily. Therefore, we can say that we are talking about a reform, an institution that is caused by some project. In this case, COVID-19 social distancing is being implemented, so there can be barriers in it. And from past, we can take an example that in land reforms during 90s, 1959 and 70s in Pakistan, this happened. And definitely this was about land distribution. It was being taken from jagirdars or landowners, and definitely it was difficult for them to accept it. They were easy. They were at unease to accept this reform. So these ceilings that were imposed on their land possession was something that was not welcomed by the society. But that was a project, and it had to be done from the normative angle of the things. So it was done, and it had some social repercussions. So there are institutional factors and there are organizational factors that need to be considered, in which we talk about the support and the facilities. For example, the link of authority and responsibility, that the authority, who will be the authority and what will be the responsibilities of the authority. The delegation of authority, to whom the authority will be given and how it can be transferred to another level, that is the lower level. And it is done basically to save the project director from the overburdening, because one person cannot handle all the things nicely. So delegation of power is there, and how this delegation of power should be given is something we need to define before the project gets started. And for monitoring, do we need a group or set of people? This is another thing that the organization needs to predefine, because monitoring is an important thing in a project, because we want to monitor or observe or see if the project is being undertaken in the right way. What are the issues in it that should be addressed at this point in time? So monitoring of the project should be done, and the group for monitoring should be decided under the organizational aspect. Training arrangements should be done by the organization. Definitely, in case of the projects, there can be new technologies, and to operate those new technologies, then there's a need of training. Even if the technologies are not introduced, there are other tools, statistically speaking or analytically speaking, that should be taught to the human resource of the project. So this is another thing that should be there so that the workforce remains up to date and productive. Accounts maintained properly to get the disbursement promptly. If the organization maintains the accounts, the disbursement will be done at time and there will be no delays, because financial delays can hinder the project from getting completed on time. So accounts should be updated so that the transactions and the disbursements are done on time and the project is not delayed. Managerial skills is another thing that we need to pay heed to in our um, organizational and institutional uh, aspects. So managerial aspects, they are talking about the good project design and implementation, because the manager of the project will help us to um, organize the project in such a way that the project becomes effective. Here the role of vision is important, and a good manager should have a good vision as well as managerial skills to get the job done in a good way. Let's take an example here. Implementation of agricultural spraying drone. You know about those drones that are being used recently to spray various pesticides on the crops. So this thing can require additional managerial skills from the farmers, which might require agents for honing the technical base skills of the managers. Um, if this training is to be given to the farmers who are working under the project, it requires another training, and in addition to that training, they should be taught by some agents, some trainers, and that should enable them to be better managers of their farming skills, and that is in this case a technical based managerial skill. They should be better manager of how this spray should be done and how they should manage their farms. So managerial skills can require updation, and for that they should be given training, or with their existing managerial skills, the human resource should be effective. So these are a few things that are related to the society and to the organization and the human resource, and this also pertains to the human resource. However, this is specific to the managerial side of the project and not to the well, other manpower which is working under the manager. And now we talk about the next aspect, which is commercial aspect. It is a dual-sided thing because it deals with the input side as well as the output side. You know that in every project, both of these things happen, that we have inputs and we have outputs. So we have to consider both of the sides. So under this aspect, the first major heading is input side. We need to consider that how the supply inputs will take place, how the seeds will be arranged, or fertilizers and machinery, and their supply should be ample and timely. If both of these things are ensured, then these inputs, for example in agricultural project, will be supplied amply, and the commercial aspect will be addressed from one side, that is the input side. So in order to make the project grow, in order to make project get ready, we need to consider this side. But the other side is also important, that is the output side. We need to consider that how the disposal of the outputs will take place. What will be the price of the output that we are selling? What are the channels where we can sell this output? We need to consider the consumption trends. We need to see that if the demand exists, people are consuming this commodity that we are producing in this project or not. We need to see that what is the level of price that should be paid. We need to see the location of the sale, that where we can sell this. The geographical aspect is here. The substantial size of the market should exist, because if the market is substantial, then we can get substantial revenues, and hence we can justify the investment. The quality of output is also a crucial thing, because in this globalized world we want to sell our outputs at with some minimum threshold of quality, and otherwise definitely it's difficult to survive in the globalized market. Then absorption of the new production without affecting the market price should not fall, because new production will be there whenever it is there. How we can adjust this in a way that should not decline the price to a level where it becomes unjustified to sell a product that we are producing. We definitely do not want to let the price decrease after a certain point, which is the price floor. So price floor should not be uh, surpassed. We should not go down this. So that is why how we can absorb that additional or new production is something we need to consider. So about output side, again we talk about that how the storage facilities can be found. It's not just from the technical aspect that we saw in the previous slides here. It's more than that. We have talked about it. That was more from the technical side, because definitely a storage capacity, storage facility or capacity has various technical things, that what should be the temperature and what should be the size of the whole facility, etc. But here we are talking about the output, and the financial side of it is to be considered here. The import and export possibilities should also be considered, because if we need some input, we might have to import it if it is not available locally, and we might have some surplus output, or we are perhaps focused on exports, so we might export. So these possibilities are also considered in the output side of the commercial aspect. And we have distribution channels, where how these will be sold. We will consider the wholesalers that we want to include in this process. We have to contact the retailers if we want to, and we know in this digital era we also have the internet option to sell our goods. So this is that another part that we need to consider in the output side. The market financing and mod is also another thing that we need to consider, that marketing, how will that be done, financing, how we will be arranging the resources for marketing, and how we will be spending these resources. And also the mod, if it will be done online or offline, because this is another thing that we need to consider. Apart from the technical aspect that we studied before, the financial side will also consider that if we are doing it in an online mode, or on a physical mode, or some offline mode. We also consider the potential markets, because we want to sell the output, and we need to consider which one are the markets where we can sell our outputs. Past and present supply position. What are the past and present supply positions? We need to consider this. About our output, we need to be sure that what sort of supply are we producing now, and what was the past position, so that we take in account of the inventory that we have, and if we are going to run out of the supply, or if we are going to build a bulk of unsold goods, or is it at the suitable level. So these are the possibilities that we can consider in this process. So output side of that commercial aspect is now completed. Now we talk about the next aspect, which is the financial aspect. It's an important aspect, because it encompasses the financial side, which is definitely one of the units in which the project is decided about, because we might get some answer that we will learn that how we calculate. NPV is something we calculate IRR and other measures, and for that we need the financial values, and here we are going to get all those values. The first thing that we should arrange in the financial aspect is the investment outlay and the cost of the project. What will be the costs and how we will do this investment, and on what various avenues this investment will be made. So this is one side. The other side is that if uh, this investment is to be done, will it be equity capital or borrowed capital? How we will arrange the borrowed capital, which comes here, the borrowed capital, and here we will be talking about the equity capital that we already have. The remaining will be financed through borrowing from one channel or the other, and the total capital will be built. The prospective returns and assessment of the incentives. What will be the returns of the project once the costs are incurred? This is that thing that we were looking for, the prospective returns, and what are the incentives that we will be getting in this process. Repaying the potential and financial viability. Um, are we able to pay off the liabilities that we have? Can we repay? Are the benefits of the returns greater than the costs, and how we will be able to uh, you know get rid of the debts or the burden that we have. We also consider the financial risk, that what are the probabilities and chances of facing some kind of loss or increasing costs or decreasing benefits. So this is another thing that we can include in our analysis. The financial analysts here will help us. Now the economic aspect, which is a very important thing. Being a student of economics, one is very much concerned about the economic side. So let's see that what things can be included in it. Proposed investment is done. So its impact is to be analyzed on the national income, how it affects our national income. Definitely, whenever some economic activity will take place, no matter how small, it is going to add to the economic, overall economy or the national income. So we need to take in account this thing. Income distribution, this is a thing that is financial or economic in nature but has social repercussions. If the project benefits the poor people, then it's a good thing. It will improve the income distribution. But if it benefits the rich, then its income distribution is not a good outcome of it. Income distribution should be improved. Redistribution should take place instead of widening the gap between poor and rich. So this is a desirable thing that we can expect from a project. National savings and national investment, how it gets affected by the project, this is something we need to consider. Are we getting more national savings or savings at national level? Or people are they able to save more and invest more or not? This is another couple of variables that we need to consider from the economic point of view. Employment generation, politically speaking as well as economically speaking, is a very important variable, and project analysts as well as the politicians will be concerned about this aspect of the project. So how much employment does this project generate is something we need to ask, and the more employment it generates, the more socially acceptable and politically beneficial this project can be. So social aspect is another thing that we need to consider in our project, and society is definitely composed of the people, and if people can benefit from a project, this would be the best thing that we can do with the help of a project, because we what is the benefit of the economic growth if it cannot be translated into the lives of the ordinary people? So it's a critical thing in my opinion. Now let's see how various social impacts can take place of a certain proposed project or investment. National integration, this can be affected. For example, in case of Pakistan, East Pakistan was a conflict, and it led to that 1971 issue. And one of the reasons behind it was the um, economic dissatisfaction of that certain part of Pakistan that led to that disintegration. And recently, Balochistan has been, on the deprived side, though efforts are being done. But previously, it was a serious issue. However, this thing is now being addressed. So, national integration can be affected if the projects they are based on a certain province and not the other provinces. So, there has to be some equity in the uh, allocation of the resources to the projects in various areas. The regional growth prospects, they are to be considered, how they are growing, and how others are left behind. For example, in Pakistan, KPK is that province that is growing at a good rate in addition to Punjab. Punjab has always been in the front, but KPK is now also doing well in this regard. So the project should also be considered about how the various regions are growing over time due to the projects. Then labor force participation should be considered. The more labor we can include, the more socially acceptable this project would be. So this is another thing that is stemming from the economic aspect, but definitely here it's about labor only. It's not just about the number. It's about the human side of the project effect. Women participation is being touted recently, so this is another thing that can be positively affected in when the project is being undertaken. If more women participation can take place, which is a trend these days, then definitely from the point of view of trend, it can be a more desirable thing. And then quality of life is also something that represents the situation of the society. If the quality of life is better, then it can be a good thing that the project is improving it. For example, Sindh is a province in Pakistan where the quality of life is very poor of quite a bit of people. They are left behind, they are deprived, uneducated, unaware of what is happening in the surroundings. So such people should be targeted, and the projects they should target the quality of life of the most deprived people. Environment is another thing which is sometimes considered as another separate aspect, can be the seventh aspect, but here we have merged it into the social aspect, because after all, society is what faces all the benefits or the cost. So project should also be considered from the economic side. For example, if the trees are being cut due to a project, this is an environmental damage. Due to the machinery that is being used, machinery, they can produce pollution, so the pollution can be there. This should be considered. Water, if it is getting polluted, this is another problem. So there can be environmental repercussions of a project, and these should also be considered in order to perform a wholesome analysis. So we have studied about 7 or 6 aspects of a project, and we know that if we want to conduct a wholesome analysis, we need to address all of these aspects as much as possible. The technical and engineering aspect, as the name goes, and then the institutional, organizational, and managerial aspects, they are to be considered, and the commercial aspect, it also needs to be considered, and then the financial aspect, financially speaking, the things how they are, economic aspect, the economic repercussions, and the social aspect, if the project is giving us social desirability or not, this is another thing we need to consider. And environment can also become a separate aspect of a project, especially in this current time where the environment has become a serious concern worldwide. So various aspects of the projects they were considered in this video, and if we consider all of these, we can come up with a wholesome analysis of a project. Thank you.